Hello, this is Truth Be Told Transformation, and I'm Bonnie Burkert, here to share tools for transformation to live your highest truth. One thing that's true for me is that I've always been fascinated with herbal healing, and in particular mushrooms. So when I moved to LA, it's been almost 20 years now, I met a man who was sharing the wisdom of Chinese tonic herbs, part of which are mushrooms. Welcome back to Truth Be Told Transformation, Rehmannia Dean Thomas.
Hey there. Nice
Hi.
to see you. Thanks.
You too. So I remember, Rehmannia, that in the early days of your work here in Los Angeles, that you would go to really cool kind of alternative events such as yoga festivals or music, art openings, things like that, and
Yeah.
share your herbal elixirs with people.
Yeah. Yeah. Those were great days. I miss that. I'm not there right now in Kentucky where I have a gallery here,
Well,
as you
I,
can see.
I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of us in Los Angeles now know about so many of the things that were quite groundbreaking at the time. Examples would be the reishi mushroom, shaga mushrooms, things like
Yeah.
that. Those have become somewhat mainstream, especially in places like, our health food stores like Air One and things like that. But for you, you're blazing trails into other parts of the country. So well done, and tell us what the experience is introducing Chinese tonic herbs to other parts of the country and what the reception's been.
Well, every question you ask me is usually going to have a big labyrinth answer. So I try and figure out how to choose my words. But out here in the Midwest, I feel like people kind of live in a kind of a comfortable, my friend used to say it's like the womb of the country where people live in a state where they can live. It's simpler. It's just simpler life here, When you're on the coast, you're sort of out on the edge of the cosmos and you're seeing the whole picture a little bit more. And the world becomes a little bit more your nest egg, whereas here it's all a mystery kind of, to a lot of people. There are conscious people everywhere you go inside America and other countries too. And the idea is to find them, so I have an elixir bar in like a food court market thing, like a local kind of, there's some arts and crafts people in there and all that. And I've got a bar in there. And people do wander through there. And occasionally one of them wanders into my booth and says, "What's this?" And I give them, talk them into having an elixir, and hopefully it begins to change their life. But it is one-on-one out here. It's one at a time, But that's all right. I think that's my dharma anyway. When you said, when you introduced me, that I've spoken with lots of people all over the place, and I have. So I feel comfortable speaking and helping engage people at all stages, whether it's just one or two people in a country town, or whether it's in the middle of a big city like Los Angeles or New York. I enjoy both.
Yeah, very much. So this is great. Now, I wanted to mention that one of the reasons that I was excited to have you on the show is because you'll be returning to Los Angeles for the Conscious Life Expo, and that's happening February 7th through 10th, and it's the event is at I believe the Hilton close to the airport, correct? And
Yes.
so that would be consciouslifeexpo.com if you'd like to learn more about this event, and you can speak with Rehmannia in person. And I know we get a chance to say hi every year whenever you're at that. So it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
So I look
Yeah.
forward to seeing you there.
I'm a Taoist herbologist under the great Master Herbalist Ron Teeguarden and his lineage, which is a 5,000-year-old lineage from China. And I'm very pleased to bring that to the Conscious Life Expo and talk about it. I am going to speak, but I'm going to be talking about the Ayurvedic super substance Shilajit. I'm going to be talking about that. But considering the fires and the toxic smoke that a lot of people have been, exposed to, I'm going to also be focusing on a formula of mine that I created called AIRE, AIRE. And you can see it at my website, supertonicherbs.com. This is a formula that will help relieve the lung toxicity, remove some of the lung toxicity, increase lung immunity, and just improve general lung qi. It can also be excellent for the quality of the voice and even to help a person break out of sort of a rut where they don't know how to express themselves. It's a great formula for that. But it's based on herbs used for thousands of years. And what I'm most proud of, what I bring is not some concept that I concocted in a kitchen somewhere after I read a number of books or took an online course or something. And that's all fine. But I've now been, half of my lifetime in learning this Chinese lineage, and I'll feel I'll never get to the bottom of it. It's so sophisticated. And I think it's reflected in my formulas. So my Lung Qi formula called Air is very sophisticated, using herbs that have been used effectively for thousands of years, particularly an herb called scute root, or its long name is Scutellary bicalensis. And this is an herb that potentially was very important in Chinese history when the Europeans tried to invade China back in the late 1700s all the way through the 1800s. And they brought lots of plagues along with them that we know really harmed the Native Americans, but the Chinese people never succumbed to any of these plagues. And it was because they were taking this herb, Scutellary bicalensis, along with other herbs that protect the lungs. Now, when COVID broke out, the Chinese actually offered also a lung immune formula to the people because, contrary to our information at the time, there were a lot of people in China who did not want to take antibiotics, so our vaccines, that is. So they also had to give them a lung qi formula based on traditional Chinese herbology. I eventually tracked that formula down and found that my formula is almost identical. Although I think my formula may in some ways even be better. I say that humbly, because I include cordyceps mushroom in my formula, which is very important in general immunity, particularly the immunity of the lungs and the capacity of the lungs to process oxygen. And this is illustrated by how cordyceps is used by people in Tibet to survive in those high altitudes. That formula is in there as well. And I'm going to be bringing this Conscious Life Expo, and I'm very proud I'll be bringing something, very honored to bring something that I think can help a lot of people.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, listen, one of the things that I love talking to you about is understanding, and you mentioned this a little bit as far as what air can do for us, right? The air formula. So we're not just talking about the lung pollution that many people might be experiencing, the problems with the air in Los Angeles, but you said that it almost can work with the body, mind, spirit part of it. And that is something I'm super fascinated by. And I was just wondering if you'd like to discuss any other herbs and maybe give some other examples of how it's working on that spirit part of things, because, right? I mean, not everybody listening is going to be having the challenges of air pollution that maybe we do right now.
That became something that I noticed through experience. I didn't know that air would benefit the ability of a person to express him or herself. I didn't know this, but the more that I took it myself, for instance, I was called upon to sing at a bar playing country music. And I'm like, I can't sing. And so I went and drank air for about a week, and suddenly I was like a pretty dang good singer. I mean, like maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's in my head, but I've talked to other people who said that it kind of broke open their ability to express themselves. I think people who use their voices, it can increase a sort of a richness in the timbre. And not only that, the psychospiritual, like when you have a person who's inhibited, it feels like they can't talk, they can't express how they feel to the world, they're blocked somehow. This formula can possibly break that open. It has herbs that do work, like reishi mushroom is in the formula, which I add into a lot of my formulas. Sure. And that is a herb that helps with psychospiritual blockages to really connect to your higher being. And the rest of the herbs facilitating the health of the vocal cords and the respiratory system, then that combined, you're going to be able to express spiritual expression and your heart expression through your words. Because when we look at energy from the chakras, we said from the third chakra, the spleen, everything below that down to the first chakra is kind of involving the physical mechanism. But when we get to the heart chakra, we're in the middle of the 7 chakra system. And from there, the heart chakra is opened up. And then above that is the lung chakra, which is now in the energetic, sphere of energy. So it would make sense that if you take herbs that open up the lung meridian and facilitate the health of the entire respiratory system, it's going to benefit not only the quality of your voice, but probably how you're able to express your heart desire, because the lungs are in the upper energetic chakra system, you know.
Yes, I love that. I mean, that makes a lot of sense right there because you're tying it into the physical,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So and yet it's like you say, it is more as we move up the chakra into the higher chakras. That's
yeah,
obviously going to be, a higher vibration, more ethereal, and higher spirit. I mean, just like
yeah,
you're right,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
interesting to look at speech as part of that in a way. But this is a good reminder, and I love having conversations like this as part of my show to help people tune in. There's some fine, subtle details of living that we're discussing here.
Yeah, because when you come across people who feel inhibited from expressing themselves, maybe it's from some trauma when they were young, maybe it's from someone telling them, you're not worth it, you're not worth it, it's whatever it is, people wind up becoming inhibited from being able to express their heart, their desires, their life. What happens is the esophagus starts to kind of almost like atrophy,
Yeah.
and you hear a person's voice get real thin, and you start to get these little frogs in it, and you know that something is blocking that flow of the vital energy we call chi from coming up into the expression through the the vocal system. And we want to open all that up. That's what this formula does. It opens up lung chi, protects lung immunity, and then benefits the entire respiratory system. Magnolia bud and mint are both in the formula, which are both kind of thermogenic for the respiratory system to clear stuck chi. That's the whole thing. It's like if we really want to get down and look at any imbalance that anyone experiences, any what we call disease,
Mm-hmm.
um, this is when a vital energy, the Chinese simply call qi, is stuck. If it's stuck somewhere, if it's stuck in the arterial system, it's atherosclerosis. If it's stuck in the liver, it's cirrhosis. If it's stuck in the uterus, it's endometriosis. And this is when the vital energy that comes from the cosmos that comes in the solar plexus is held in the kidneys and expressed through the spleen and the lungs, the heart, moving that chi, metabolizing the chi into the blood, and then taken to energy centers where it's burned, that we call ATP, or which is basically chi. It's all chi. If that's ever blocked, and in this case we're talking about it being blocked in the esophagus, it's going to affect the ability of the person to get past that chi blockage to express their needs to their loved ones, whatever it is. And so the idea is to go in and break up the chi stagnation. We call that when it's stuck, chi stagnation
Mm-hmm.
in the respiratory, in the esophagus, in the lung, in the throat, and allow the expression to come through. And then you also work via the spirit to raise the frequency where that expression becomes higher, So it's not an expression of like frustration, anxiety. Oh, he did this to me. She did that to me. None of that stuff. It's higher frequency. But it's all part of my karma. It's all part of my growth.
Right.
So I understand now. And so we look at in our lineage and all the way back from at least 5,000 years, it was all based on getting in there and finding a way to unlock that chi that's blocked there. And acupuncture is part of that. The needles unlock the blocked chi. And then the herbs that we use work on a nutritive level to nourish the body at a deeper level than just food does. That's why herbs and food are classified differently, because they work in different ways in the body. The food primarily works to provide our daily energy needs through metabolism. And the herbs go deeper, stuff like epigenetic support, supporting epigenetic damage. Maybe a person came into this life with stuck chi that they inherited from their family because a family had lung cancer issues. This person's born into this life going, well, my whole family had lung cancer, so maybe I will. And all of a sudden, oh my God, my lungs, and there's this psychosomatic effect. Well, we just break that up. But you go with herbs down into the to tonify the kidneys and start to build up your life force so that we can rise above those epigenetic imprints that we may have been born with. That's where this is so sophisticated and so effective in helping people out of all kinds of ruts, mind, body, and spirit. I'm just really proud I got the chance to learn this. I've been studying now for 22 years since my master teacher. Plus, I started it in 1985 when I happened to go to China with my then Chinese wife, and went to the region where the herbs are collected and saw the way that people revered them. And we started making tinctures in 1986 in San Francisco. That's when I really began. So, but I'm still fascinated by the wisdom that these people developed, and that they understood that it's all a matter of breaking up chi stagnation in order to fully express the entire, evolutionary potential of the mind, body, and spirit.
Wow, it's so, like you say, very sophisticated and so ancient. And I mean, my mind goes to, what were they figuring out? Because the people 5,000 years ago had very different issues than we have right now, with our, digital overload and, crazy, global politics. So, I mean, I'd love to get your thought on this. And this is almost where it gets a little bit more cosmic. I sort of entitled this show because I know that you've always got a loftier view beyond just our planet. And even sort of, this is where I learned the term astrobiology was from you, Rehmannia, right? Just the thinking that the spores of mushrooms came on meteors. Am I right with that?
Yeah. They sometimes just blow through the atmosphere, that outer space. They can survive out there, and they come in as just dust blowing in. But the thing I always go back to when you talk about this, and Paul Stamets talks about it a lot and everything too, but I talk about more of the cosmic spiritual side of it, I think, than I don't know who else does on that to that degree. I don't think Paul goes that far in. But I look at it in terms of like, if these mushroom spores are blowing onto Earth, and they are encountered, they find themselves in a place where there are these exact ratios of moisture to oxygen and light. And then there's what we call a carbon substrate. So there's all forests with all the wood and the detritus dying down and creating soils for the mushroom spore lands there from outer space and goes, hey, wow, I got a place I can myceliate. And the mycelia starts to what we call run through this. And sometimes if you're walking in the woods and you kick over a leaf and you see this little white like tendrils coming out, that's all fungal mycelia trying to create what we call a myxosphere underneath the soil. That's this information carrying network that's carrying nutrients and information throughout the entire ecosystem. Well, now we go back and say these things blew in from outer space. That means they have to have evolved in a place exactly like Earth, with exactly the same carbon, oxygen, nitrogen ratios, and moisture and light, water. It has to have been the same. This means that the template of life, as we perceive it, is everywhere. And astrobiologists are going, so they're in odds on it. Some of them say no, the prerequisites of life on Earth are so exact. So you have to have a Jupiter-like planet right where it is. You have to have asteroid belt right where it is. You have to have a sun right where it is. You have to be orbiting it exactly like we do with a moon like ours. It's like, well, hey, if there's 75 trillion planets, stars out there, it's likely that, because there was a guy named Oliver Morton. He wrote a book called Eating the Sun. I loved it. And he said, I made a common point in there. He said that biologists generally agree at this point that the idea of the pine tree, the earthworm, is a universal cosmic phenomenon, because when you put the 5 basic gases together, they're going to start to create stuff that becomes prebiotics of life. And they are everywhere. And when those prebiotics of life land in a place that's conducive, something like what we see right now will eventually evolve, because there's a template by which that evolution will take place. But it goes over, billions of years, but many millions of years. So we're just part of a big gamut here, And I mean, I love to just make that comment. I don't know what it has to do with my Chinese herbology. But
Well, it's I mean, for me, it's really about your wisdom and you looking at a bigger picture. So the as above, so below picture of
Well,
it all.
yeah, I'm sorry. The reishi mushroom, which I talk about a lot, spores come in. That is a cosmic life form, and there is something there that does affect our consciousness to plug us into that cosmic viewpoint. There really is. If I could say anything, and I've been saying this since the day I discovered reishi in 1999. I actually discovered it in 1985 in China. I started to study it in 1998. I've said since that day that reishi could be a kind of a key to plugging humanity into its higher potential and higher life, future. And I think that those keys are coming to us now because it's necessary. If the human race does not receive those keys to open up other parts of our consciousness that are there, but we haven't had to use them yet because the earth provided a safe haven for us just to live as material beings. Now, the earth is going to start feeling like less and less of a safe haven. And what that's going to do is require us to become more cosmic beings. And we're going to have to open up our intuitive consciousness. Say, this plant is good for me, right? This plant's poisonous. Yeah, this water is okay to drink. That's not. This guy's lying. That guy's not. Let's go this way. That way is dangerous. That's going to become prerequisites of life in the future. And so what's happening right now, and on the political level, I believe, is spurring a massive evolutionary shift that will propel us not by choice, but by necessity into going to that place that's already built in our collective genome from the cosmos and opening up that room and starting to become intuitive. What happens when we become intuitive beings? What happens when nobody can lie to us? What happens? What happens when no one can lie? We all have to be in integrity with each other.
Yes.
Or we all become it. We don't have to. We become them because we can't lie, and we can't lie to ourselves. And so everything becomes this search for universal truth and not just alternate truths.
Yeah.
And so, reishi mushroom being a cosmic life form, I think is one of those major keys. And I've said it. It's easy to find. It's it's not psychotropic. You don't use it to get high, but it does open up a higher conscious level that I think we are headed toward now. And our civilization being spurred toward that through societal and evolutionary factors and conditions right now. And
Can you break it down the way it works? Sort of similar to how I believe you said it was the cordyceps were working with the lungs and how it's working with that lung meridian and how therefore it could open up the heart chakra and the energetic system higher up. How does the reishi work? What organs is it working on? And just how is it interacting within our body?
Thanks for the question. I've thought about it a lot, and I've come to the potential conclusion that the reason, well, not only because mushrooms are psychotropic, many are, and it does have a psychotropic effect, but it's not noticeable in altering your mind. It just opens up a kind of a reverence for life. But I would say it is a psychotropic feeling. But on the physiological level, reishi is also known as an immune modulating herb. It's great for immune issues. And if we just look at it from a physiological viewpoint, if you take something that strengthens your general immunity, you're then going to feel safer. You're going to feel like, oh, I feel more empowered. What's that going to do to your adrenals? Your adrenals, which are connected to the pituitary gland, which are connected to all the emotional hormones about feeling safe. When you feel safe and empowered, you suddenly your aura gets brighter. When your aura gets brighter, you are resonating a brighter light that we don't see with our eyes, but we actually pick it up. And all life is attracted to the light. And so then when you become lighter, a lot more of a light being, your auric field, if you take a Carillion photograph, you would see that it's gotten brighter after taking reishi for a while. And that's why then the dogs all come running up to you and want to, walk with you and you put their face right in you and lick your face and everything, and children and these things, and dogs are great, Geiger counters for like people's energy, and
and I think kids too. I like that you mentioned little kids, because they suffer no fools. If they don't,
Yeah,
they're
I
not
know.
feeling you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and that's how it works, somewhat unexplainably yet on a psychotropical level, but on a physiological level, it just plain works to make us feel safe. When we feel safe, we feel empowered. We feel like, hey, I can go do that. And if the adrenals are replenished, your kidneys are going to start kind of like recharging this energy we call Jing. It's like your deep life force. It's an epigenetic energy that you inherited from your great grandparents, parents. Everything they were doing, everything they were eating, how they were living, you have inherited that, and you're standing on that foundation. It's called your bloodline, your genetic bloodline. And that is we refer to as epigenetics, the effect on you that the activities of your ancestors did that affects who you are today and what you are capable of in your life, how much your potential of creating and experiencing abundance in your life. And we call this, the Chinese simply call this Jing, the great masters. Jing, they said, is held in the kidneys. The adrenals sit right on top of the kidneys. The kidneys are like looks like two black beans. They're right down here in the middle, lower back near the solar plexus, where we believe the life force from the cosmos enters the body through what we call the microcosmic orbit. And then the kidneys hold that as a repository of your life potential. And the adrenals are like these two little toboggan cap looking things sitting on top of the kidneys. And they could be seen as kind of like a hatch that you open up to dip down into this wellspring of your life potential when you want to exert, you want to go do that bike ride or do that mountain climb or run that race, or go out and play basketball or tennis. You're going to dip down into this deeper Jing energy. And the adrenals are the valve that lets you go draw up this adrenaline energy to win that game. When you watch those guys playing basketball, they have a lot of Jing. Their ancestors were doing everything right, man, these guys, because they're winning a game under stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we build up, that's where the great masters understood. And they searched for herbs that go right to the kidneys and we call tonify, which means to tune the strings of your instrument into harmony, all your harmonious energies. So there's no dissonant energy. That again is when there's illness. And so to go to the kidneys, and that's where the beauty of these great masters. And you asked me earlier if I could comment on how did these people figure this stuff out so long ago? Well, we don't know. But I have this scenario, right, where there's these two great masters. So in the ancient days of northern China, northeastern China, the Manchurian province, where the Chinese believe the mother people of the earth came from there, and particularly around a mountain called Mount Changbai is very famous. It's the people first modern Homo sapien was there, apparently, and now they found tombs that seem to allude to that. And they found charred remains of herbs in those tombs. So they were doing this for a long time. So their whole thing was they weren't yet living in a world where they had to worry about chi stagnation and stuck chi in their lung meridian. They were worried. They weren't worried. They were just wanted to know how to outrun a saber-toothed tiger, or how to help their children, how to be climbing that mountain when they're 150 years old. That was their orientation. Wow. So they looked for herbs. They were called longevity herbs. And that's herbs that go to Jing, tonify Jing, the kidneys. And they found herbs like Hosho Wu and Astragalus and Rehmannia, my namesake herb, and Reishi is a big, one of those. And they classified these as anti-aging longevity herbs. Now, these people then were said to, in Chinese folklore, were said to have attained immortality. And that they apparently still live, today, people up in northern China in the Changbai Mountain area see an old master flying around in the upper mountains, flying. They call them celestial immortals, because they learned so much about life that they're no longer earthbound. And that they did this through taking tonic herbs primarily and then living a really frugal diet. So you got my story now. You got a couple of these guys, a couple of these immortals, right? And they're sitting up on the hillside, sitting back and talking, chatting. And they look down, what's going on in the valley down there? And they see the first buildings of the imperial palace being built. And Peking is taking shape. And they're seeing these minions of people being paid a pittance to create this giant building that one family is going to live in. And they probably looked at each other and went, I think I can see where this is going.
Right.
That's just how I put it, But somehow they knew. They somehow foretold the plight of humanity, and how we stay powerful in the midst of it all.
Yeah, I mean, it's really I feel like there's such a reverence for life in your studies and the development of these formulas, of these very, very beautiful formulas. And more people are interested. I mean, again, Rehmannia,
Yeah.
I've been knowing you for 20 years and just watching people's, sort of openness to taking mushrooms. I mean, there's different mushroom
Yeah.
formulas all over the
Yeah.
place, mushroom coffee.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's exciting to see people open to this. And I guess I think we would say people need it more than ever, right? I mean,
Yeah.
life
Uh-huh.
has gotten
Yeah, let's dip into
complex.
that for a minute, because I did kind of create the first prototypes of that in America. Over
Amen.
in Southeast Asia, there already were products called Gano coffee, which was reishi and coffee mixed, and that was already something that was being done in Asia. But yeah, and back in around 2000, when I started doing those parties you were talking about, I created a reishi cappuccino that I took around with me,
Yeah.
with cacao, reishi, and oat milk, and little Poshowu Rehmannia, a little bit of monk fruit, which I introduced also into the marketplace. My teacher, Ron Teeguarden, did actually, but he called it Guilin sweet fruit. It came from the province of Guilin in China. It didn't have the name monk fruit yet. And then I developed using it in my formulas as a mild sweetener, and that was the first place it was used. And somebody came up with the clever name monk fruit that came out. But we were all preceding that, and we were creating. And so then at Erewhon Grocery, I had a young apprentice I taught named Truth Calkins, and after I left there, he got kind of famous on the reishi cappuccino that we had developed, and it got to be known, and it wound up winning like the best hot drink in Los Angeles, second best hot drink.
Awesome. Yeah.
The first best was like a Guatemalan woman and her daughter who created something from sweet potatoes. And I said, they can have number one. It's cool. We got number two. And so ever since then, I've been, so we used to always refer to our drinks as like a mushroom latte cake. I don't like to use the word mushrooms because they don't taste like mushrooms.
Right.
They're tree mushrooms. The mushrooms that are used in these mushroom coffees come from fungi that are called polypore fungi that are grown on trees for the most part. So chaga is a tree parasite fungi, and same with reishi, coriolis, maitake, all of those.
Lion's mane is a popular
mushrooms.
one right now.
Turkey tail is coriolis.
Okay.
All those are tree mushrooms. They're called polypores. They're not the gilled mushrooms that you associate with having in your salad or something, or in your mushroom soup. These don't taste like mushrooms. They're actually like cork. They have a corky material. You've got to grind it up, and it comes this kind of pulpy stuff. And then you extract it, and it's actually a little bit bitter in its own right. So then you mix it with other things, and you can wind up creating a coffee-like product. But the really good thing about this development of this now is that when you look for these coffee products, you can find some that have no coffee in them. I actually suggest going that route because coffee does turn on what we call false fire in your adrenals. It kind of stimulates your adrenals in a way that causes them to exert adrenaline energy, which we don't really want to do. We want to save that for when we're actually really needing adrenaline support, not just having it leaking out because we drank a cup of coffee, like we're getting the jitters, right? We don't want that.
It's true.
That's called false fire. And so you look for a mushroom coffee that's made with all like herbal and stuff like roasted dandelion root will be in there. This is all fine, chicory, things like that. And they're great products. I have one, it's called Spirituino. It's very, very well balanced with tonic herbs, astragalus, rhodiola, lion's mane mushroom, reishi mushroom, and a bit of cacao, a bit of oat milk powder, all extracts.
Excellent.
So there's no sediment on the bottom. You put it in there, stir it in, it completely dilutes. Only a little teaspoon's worth because it's concentrated powder extract. I introduced that into the marketplace in 2007. So anyway, but back to the general. I mean, they are good because we don't want to overstimulate our adrenals in false ways. We call false fire. There's caffeine and stuff like that. Because then the adrenals eventually experience burnout and we start to age. We start needing that cup of coffee or that diet cola every morning to get up and get going. And that's because our adrenals are going, man, I'm tired. Give me that stimulus, That's not the way we want to be. want to be nourishing our adrenals. So when we go with reishi mushroom, what I said earlier about it making you feel safe, building up your general immunity, your white blood cells are more empowered to phagocytize and destroy irregular stuff in the blood, like cancerous cells. Your body feels safer, more empowered. It relieves your adrenals of adrenal stress, and then your adrenals can start to recuperate. Your kidneys start to refill that Jing energy I talked about, and you start feeling over time more empowered. And that's what all these mushroom coffees commercials say in a more simplistic way. This is giving me sexual potency and power. When I get up in the morning, I'm all over my girlfriend, you know, and that's the way those commercials are, you know. But it's, in a blunt way of putting it, it's true, you know. I guess me with my scientific explanations, you know, reach like people at a certain level, and these other products, they're good, but they're managing to get like a broader population, so it's fine.
It's exactly, and I mean, your vibe attracts your tribe, Rehmannia. So I'm sure
Yeah,
you're
right,
figuring
right.
that out along the way. Now, you had mentioned Shilajit, so we're going to sort of diversify a little bit. You've been talking a lot about the mushrooms. Now,
Yeah,
botanic herbs are not only mushrooms, correct? There are
no,
other herbs. So,
yeah.
and is Shilajit a tonic herb?
Yes, it is,
That's what I thought.
although it is under the classification of a tonic herb, Shilajit fits that classification. Shilajit is from Ayurveda, from India. It's from a different medical system.
I see.
And it is, there's a term in Ayurveda that is identical, synonymous with tonifying or tonic herb. It's called rasayan. And rasayan means it's an ultra superfood that works holistically and non-specifically to benefit numerous aspects of the health of the mind, body, and spirit. So the reason I'm so fascinated with Shilajit now, I was first, my teacher, Ron Teeguarden, told me about it in around 2000. And then I met a good friend of mine, Daria Rosin, who has Pure Black. And we actually even lived together for a little while in a house. And I was there when he was developing his first, that was the first Shilajit resin that hit the market in America. And I'm proud of him for being the first to bring it out. Now there's a slew of them. But the reason I'm so caught up in this is that Shilajit, of all substances on earth, it is by far the most potent. If you were to take all of the potent substances on earth, you say you're taking royal jelly and chlorella, well, and bee pollen and whatever, and some of the tonic herbs like astragalus and reishi, Shilajit would still be like up there, wow, you know, in the way that I evaluate it, because it is the humic remains of entire ancient ecosystems. So the entire mushroom and fungal kingdom and all its mycelium, its mycorrhiza, was existent in that ecosphere. So it's in Shilajit, everything, including the plants I just mentioned. They're probably all somewhat analogs of those plants are inherent in Shilajit. So how could that be? The question. Now I'm going to talk about this in my lecture at Conscious Life Expo in February. Well, we don't know, but here's my hypothesis and my equation. When the Indian subcontinent crashed into the Asian continent, which it's known that these were two continents. They were moving toward each other at about 9 meters a century, I think it was. And they eventually crashed into each other 35 to 45 million years ago, they say. When that happened, that's how the Himalayan mountains were pushed up. And that's why the Himalayan mountains are such a high mountain chain, because they're a new mountain chain, relatively speaking. That's why they're so large. Like the Appalachian Mountains in America are an ancient mountain chains. That's why they're so eroded. Mm-hmm. They looked like the Himalayas at one point. So the Himalayan mountains are pushed up. So this was only 35 million years ago, which means there could have been, and likely, I mean, you know, expectedly, there were rainforests and forests on both those coasts that were extant, and with their entire ecosystems, with their fish ecosystems and bird aviary systems, reptiles, and they collided. And when those mountains were pushed up, some of those ecosystems, an entire forest was mushed in and like entombed in the rock. And there's an interesting thing when you start looking at what's called humic acids. They're the smallest molecules in the forest, in soil, in dirt. They're only achieved through the cleaving down of dirt and soil and minerals over millions and millions of years until they finally are cleaved down to these microscopic molecules that are so little that other plant roots can take them up for nutrition. So they become the nutrition of the entire rainforest, of the entire forest ecosystem is humic acids. The health of the ecosystem is dependent on them. When these dirt soil molecules get to, carbon and mineral molecules reach that level of humic acid, for some unknown reason, they do not deteriorate any further. They remain in perpetuity in that state. So now you've got this ecosystem that was locked in the rocks 35 million years ago, or up to 45 million years ago. And it is now broken down into entirely just humic acids, with some mineral content. And then in the springtime, when the high rocks up above 10,000 feet is where Shilajit is found, because when the mountains were first being pushed up is when those forests were rolled in. And then that became the tectonic strata way up high. It pulled the remains of those forests up there with it. And below is sedentary rock. And that's why the Shilajit is found in the high mountains. And then in the spring, when the rock fissures crack a little bit and fissure in the warmer sun, some of this stuff seeps out as a black tar. Wow. And it was said long ago that these monkeys were seen climbing way up there and defying their odds of their death or falling to eat this stuff. They'd be able to sit on the ledge eating this stuff. And mountain lions too, and goats. That's why they would go up there, is to eat Shilajit. So people eventually tried it around 2,000 years ago, or maybe more. And they came to call it Conqueror of Mountains, Destroyer of Weakness. And it has other names other than Shilajit. But and then they kind of kept it. It got secluded to the Sherpas and the Sufis, and who were kind of the elite class of India way back then. They were like an elite religious, class, and they locked Shilajit up to themselves. So, and then we didn't really hear about it. If you walked through the streets of, Indian city in Varanasi or something, you might see in New Delhi in particular, up there more closer to the mountains, you might see an old monk sitting there with these big black clods of material, look like charcoal sitting there. And that's Shilajit. He's trying to sell it. Wow. Our sheet. And but it didn't really get known in the West because it was sort of like kept quiet. Same with tonic herbs. The great masters of Asia did not really want Westerners to learn about this tonic herbs, and probably the same with Shilajit, because they thought that we were like children over here. We would kind of only look from the surface value and just usurp it all. And this is something that I want to make clear, that Shilajit is a sacred substance. There isn't much of it. And so when you do have it, use it, frugally and wisely. All you need is a pinky nail size amount on your tongue. And that's enough in a day, because it's so powerful. You don't need to be gulping this stuff down, because then you're depriving it. We could actually reforest the entire planet with Shilajit. It's so potent in its fertility potential. So if we go gobbling it up out of privilege, that's very negligent and stupid. And I want to make that point. I make it again in my talk. We use this reverently.
Yeah,
but now it's available. And as far as quality goes, I have an amazing Shilajit that is 91% humic acids, which is fulvic acids, that is, which is, I've never seen anything like that. I thought the highest I've ever seen was 74.
Wow.
And we got ours done in a lab in Sri Lanka, and when we got it back, we couldn't believe it was 91. It's almost the pure humic remains of these ancient rainforests with no other detritus in it that's fluffing it out. No pieces of microscopic pieces of wood or leaf or bits of grass, stone, or dust. It's just the humic acids of these ancient rainforests. I have that. I'm going to be bringing some of it up to conscious life. But the thing is, here's the funny thing about it. Now you go on, there's this plethora of people talking about Shilajit, right? And they're all going like this. They're all going, Ours is the only one, and the others are all fake. They're fake. They're bad. They're lying to you. Mine's the only one. Hey, man, I've looked into that. And they go, we got COAs to prove it, man. COA means a certificate of analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And the certificate of analysis needs to focus on the fulvic acid content. That's how you determine the quality of it. Man, there was one, and there was this guy. He's just a regular Joe. He's not like an actor. He's just this regular looking guy. He's talking about what Shilajit did for him and how this company's made him change his life and everything. And go get this one. And he said, we got COAs and all this stuff. Or he was just a customer, but it was a pretty high quality film. He was probably an actor. But he goes, they have 6 COAs. So I go, okay, well, let me see them. So I go to the website. No COA on the website. Now that's the first giveaway. If the website doesn't have their COAs published, just skip it. Don't even bother to ask them to send it to you because it's not right.
Good advice.
And I eventually found a photograph of the COA in it, like laying like a picture, a piece of paper of the COA laying on the ground next to one of their, like a promotional photograph, one of their jars. So I took a screenshot photo and blew it up and stretched it out, and so I could read it. 4.5% fulvic acids.
Oh no!
These people were claiming they had the number one.
Oh no!
So it's really like these days, man. You can't. That's why we've got to go into that intuitive consciousness that I believe is our next evolutionary prerogative.
Yes, very much. And that's why people, I wanted to present your work to people so that they know your reverence for these ancient systems of healing and wellness, and so that people can seek you out. Now, give us your website one more time, please.
SuperTonicHerbs.com.
SuperTonicHerbs.com. Rehmannia Dean Thomas, we look forward to seeing you at Conscious Life. Do you know which day you'll be doing your lecture?
I think it's on Sunday at 10 o'clock.
Okay, fantastic. That sounds great. And I know I will see you there. And I wish you safe travels. Thank you for all the work you do. I could go herb by herb in the pantheon of Chinese tonic herbs, of which there are hundreds, correct?
Yeah.
I could do herb by herb. Next show. I think we've covered like 2 or 3 this show. So until the next time, we'll do some more.
Okay.
My best wishes to you.
It's always great. I appreciate you always calling me, Bonnie, to interview me.
I'm just fascinated. It's one of my most favorite subjects, and you were one of my most favorite guests. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Bonnie. See you
best
all.
wishes. Bye. Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Bonnie Burkert, and just here to really introduce you to people that are putting the light out there into the world. And it could mean in terms of our different forms of energy, the different forms that our energy takes, and how we can really tap that and be mindful of it and hopefully participate. And, Tony Sweet is on every Friday, and he's doing the same. He wants to introduce you to the possibilities of life beyond, as well as people that are doing, amazing work here on this planet. So don't forget, he's on Fridays at 3 p.m. Pacific if you'd like to join in live, and we always have a great chat room going on that. Robert Hensley also in the mix. So with the Minuteman Report, please follow us and share and let people know what we're up to over here at Truth Be Told. We will see you at Conscious Life Expo. That's consciouslifeexpo.com. It's 3 days, actually 4 days, and they have panels, great talks. There's going to be music, people like Rehmannia that who will be selling things as well as teaching us. So I've been going for, I don't know how many years, probably almost 20. It's fantastic, and I look forward to seeing you there. I know Tony and Robert and I will all be there. So hope to see you at Conscious Life Expo. Until the next time.